Now, looking back, I can easily see that it was a demonic spirit attached to me. It's just so crazy how I went from the party girl to a homeowner, a wife, a godly woman. That change did not happen overnight, but it happened for me and it can happen for you too.
I'm outside in an AMG, right outside, TT, two-turn baby girl, you know me.
A few years ago, if you would have asked me what my mission was, it would have probably been to outdrink and outparty everyone that I found. This was me just a few short years ago, y'all. I was living wild. I was doing whatever I wanted to do, and I was just a city girl. So I'm gonna tell you guys how I went from city girl to godly woman. And I'm telling the story in the hopes that it'll touch someone, it'll inspire you, and give you some motivation if you're trying to change your life. So let's get into all the juicy details. Since I can remember, I've always had a bad relationship with alcohol and partying because I was always trying to cover something up. In high school, I went through a really traumatic experience, and from then on, I felt the need to kind of just make everything disappear in my mind. So once I started drinking alcohol, I was 16 when I started drinking alcohol, by the way, and it just took over me. It took over my entire life to where I could not do anything unless I was drinking. Like, unless drinking was involved, count me out, okay? My parents were kind of strict when I was in high school, so though I partied a little bit, most of the time I had to like sneak out or go stay at a friend's house and like, you know, those kind of things to where I could go to the parties and do stuff that I really want to do, because most of the time my parents would be like, sure, but they never let me go out all the time like other people's parents. Like, other people's parents would let them go out every weekend. Mine were like, no, you can go out like this weekend and maybe in a couple weeks, but you're not going out every weekend. So a lot of the times I would stay over at a friend's house, or I would kind of just sneak my way into going out. This set up a horrible problem for me when I got to college, because when I got to college, oh, with nobody watching me, oh, it was up. It was up and it was stuck. I felt like I was on top of the world. I could do anything I wanted to do. My parents weren't watching, and I could drink as much as I wanted to, party as much as I wanted to, and nobody was gonna say anything. This, of course, led to a very, very unhealthy relationship, not only with alcohol, but with my self-confidence, my self-esteem, just with me in general. Like, it felt like I was covering up the fact that I didn't really love myself. I never really thought I was the most beautiful or attractive girl growing up, because I had way prettier friends, and boys would always choose my friends over me. So I already had this mentality that I wasn't beautiful. So it was just so much when I got to college that I was just covering up. But of course at the time I didn't know that. I just thought I was outside, you know, I was having fun, I was living my best life. Little did I know, God did not want that for me. There was something else that God saw for my life that I just didn't see, or I didn't even think that I could ever achieve. Like, in the back of my mind, there was always this perfect woman that I wanted to be, the woman that didn't drink, the woman that dressed really nice, always looked good and put together. But I felt like I could just never be that woman. In a sense, I felt like I was already too far gone, and I was known as the party girl, the drinking girl, the blackout drunk girl, because I used to get wasted, y'all. Wasted, like blackout wasted every time I drank, because I didn't really know how to hold my alcohol. So there will be times where I'm out with family and friends and I'm drinking so much that I black out around my family, and I forget the next day like what happened, what I did. And it was always this huge sense of guilt and shame on me that I felt, but I didn't really know how I could stop doing what I was doing. Like, it felt like it was just ingrained in me. Now, looking back, I can easily see that it was a demonic spirit attached to me, making me feel this way. In college, I also dealt with a very mentally abusive relationship. My boyfriend at the time was not very good at reassuring me or like helping me realize my self-worth. Like, he was very manipulative, and I was 17 when I went to college. He was 22. He was much more advanced than I was, so he would manipulate me and play with my mind and make me feel so much lower than I already was. Like, I was honestly just at a zero, and I was just trying to be fun and be cool so I could get validation from other people. I didn't know much about God, even though I grew up in a family that went to church. I didn't know much about God at all. I didn't know anything about Jesus, and so I was just kind of lost in the world. So I was looking for validation in boys, like, and relationships, like, you know, romantic relationships, so that I could feel like, okay, this boy thinks I'm pretty, I must be pretty. So I would kind of get myself into like promiscuous situations and like relationships that didn't mean much, or just kind of finding myself like always searching, but I didn't really realize what I was searching for. I had such a bad relationship with alcohol that it made me do things that were not in my real character. It just made me act so crazy to where people were always upset with me and people were looking at me a certain kind of way. And so because of this, I was looking to be good in other ways. Like, oh, if I can be a good girlfriend, then I'll be good enough. Or if I can be good in bed, then I'll be good enough. And this just honestly spiraled me downward so fast, y'all. Like, I remember I was out of town and I was with my boyfriend at the time, and I was in an open relationship with him, so we were just kind of living life, doing our thing. And I remember it was one time we were in bed together, and afterwards I went out, I sat on the patio, and I vividly heard the Lord say to me, like, I've never heard the Lord speak to me as clearly as he did that day, y'all. But this is when my life started to take a turn. So I had just graduated college at this time, so I was probably about 22, 23 years old. And I heard the Lord say to me, Cody, this is not the life I had planned for you. You know better. And I cried. Mind you, I was drunk, okay? But the Lord's voice just came to me so strongly that I just broke down, y'all. I broke down. And I will never forget that moment, because it was really a turning point for me in my life. And I was like, you know what, Cody? You gotta get it together, sis. This is not who you are. This is not even who you want to be. You have this grand vision of who you really want to be. So why are you being the opposite of that girl? When I tell y'all, I was wilding out since 16, 17 to 23. I was a wild child. Like, I just didn't care. I was just doing whatever I wanted, and I thought because I was a good person that it wasn't really sin, or I wasn't like being detrimental to myself because I'm a nice person, and I'm just like, oh, well, one day I'll get it together. But it doesn't have to be today. I'm young, I'm wild, I'm free. I'm listening to all these songs that are like, turn up, party, live your best life. And I'm thinking, if I don't do that, I'm abnormal. So let me just keep doing what I'm doing so that I can feel normal, so I can feel validated, so I can just feel good about myself, so I can love myself. I was thinking that all those things would somehow, which is crazy now that I think back on it, but I was literally thinking that all those things would somehow equate to me loving myself eventually. But after that day, I remember vividly, I was in Miami on the patio of this man's house crying because the Lord told me, this is not what I have for you, my child. it wasn't some instantaneous, miraculous, like overnight transformation. I didn't just magically stop drinking alcohol or going to the club or smoking weed. Like, I just knew from that day on that I had to make some kind of change. And I didn't know what that change was. I didn't know how to read the Bible. I had never read the Bible before. And all the times I really tried, I didn't know what those thous and thou'ts and, you know, shall. I didn't know what that meant. So I felt like, oh, the Bible must not be for me. I'm not smart enough to read this. So instead, what I did was broke up with that guy, because I was like, no, this is not what I want for my life. I want my own man. I want a healthy, loving relationship. So I broke up with him. At this time, I was living with my best friend. We had moved out of our parents' homes and got our own apartment because I had graduated college. And I was like, you know what? I need to be free of my family. So I moved out, got my own apartment with my best friend. And this was the time that I started doing the self-work and healing work that I needed to do in order to move into the next phase in my life. So I know you're all probably wondering, what did you do? How did you start making the transformation? Let us know the secret. There is no secret. There is no secret. In the beginning, what I did was make small changes. So I started to change my Instagram feed. I started to follow people that I wanted to kind of model my life after, people that inspired me, people that looked the way I wanted to look, people that had the jobs that I wanted to have. And so that kind of started to shift my mindset to show me that there were people out there that were living their real, true best lives, and that I could too. Secondly, the thing I did was I started to buy self-help books. So books that kind of taught you how to wake up earlier, taught you how to really dig deep into yourself and be the best person that you could be. And this was before I really still got to know God, so I was still just trying to figure it out. But I started buying those books. I read one of my favorite books to date, The Alchemist. That could just kind of, those books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know, the ones that people always talk about when they're starting their self-love and healing journey. I read those books. I would watch the compilation videos of like Will Smith and all these people talking about,
You gotta wake up early. You can do it. You are stronger than you think. You think waking up at 10 a.m. is gonna get you the life you wanna get? It's not. You need to wake up at 5 a.m.
Like, I was listening to those compilation videos. I was listening to podcasts. And so in turn, things slowly started to change in my life. I started to prioritize my health more. I went vegan. I started working out, going to the gym. I started regularly like taking care of my hair and better care of my skin, my nails, learning how to do better makeup so that I can look the way I wanted to look. I started to buy different clothing, and even I was still pretty young, so I wasn't dressing like a super modest girl, but I was still finding my way. I got into a relationship that kind of derailed me a little bit. It just kind of took me off track. I started focusing less on myself and my self-healing journey and started focusing on being a better girlfriend, and that set me back like a year because I was in that relationship about a year. He did get into some legal trouble, and so I was always stressed out. I was stressed a lot. I was depressed. And so that stress kind of set me back a bit. At the time, I was bartending, so me making cocktails and getting people drunk all the time in turn made me like drink more, go back to kind of partying more. So my process was really like a roller coaster. It was up and down, up and down. But I think the thing that really pushed me to where I am now is just consistency. I never gave up on becoming the person that I wanted to become. So after that relationship ended, I got into another relationship. Like very soon after, I found a guy that I thought could teach me things. He was a lot bit older. He was older than me, and I was like, oh, this would be a really good relationship. And so I really think that relationship kind of also pushed me forward in this sense, because I started traveling, and I hadn't really traveled too much out of the country as an adult. So I went to all these gorgeous different places, and I think that traveling really opened up my mind to a whole new world that I did not think that I would ever be able to achieve, let alone in my early 20s. I would just have such grand, luxurious experiences that completely shifted my mindset from the broke dudes I was dating. I was like, oh, there's men out here that will really level me up. There's men out here, like Beyonce says, let me upgrade you. There's people out here that will upgrade me. That relationship kind of helped me in that sense. Also helped me because I was able to start a business. I took a leap of faith and I was like, okay, I could be a businesswoman. So I started reading books and teaching myself the skill that I wanted to learn, learning more about that craft, learning more about how to design my own websites. And so I was constantly just teaching myself skills and learning, trying to be a sponge so that I was a more well-rounded woman, if that makes sense. Being a business owner in itself, especially with the business that I had, I made crystal body jewelry. It was so amazing to see myself transform just within doing that in itself. Like, I went from worrying about going to the club to worrying about, all right, well, how am I gonna save enough money to buy this thing that I need to make this piece? Or how am I gonna market my jewelry to different people, you know? And how am I gonna run my Instagram page so I can get more clientele? So that's really where my mind started to shift more. I'm like, okay, I can be this woman. Fast forward about a year and a half later, my high school sweetheart and the man that I had been praying for my entire life, today my husband, we rekindled a relationship. It was so random, but I know in my heart that it was God's divine timing. My relationship had ended and his relationship had actually ended, my husband, and we were like, man, is this the time for us to explore our relationship, you know, and see like what this could be? Mind you, we were high school sweethearts, so we always had that love for each other, but we just never reconnected until I was about 25. Or I was 24 going on 25 when we reconnected. We got married within 2 months of us reconnecting and dating again. And that whole process in itself was truly led by God. His family was on board, my family was on board, and the love that we had for each other was still so strong. It was truly indescribable. I mean, we didn't plan a wedding. We didn't do all the extra things that people do when they're getting married. We literally told our families, went to get all our paperwork. We didn't go to the courthouse, but we did go to the church to get married, which was divine. It was really divine. God laid everything out for us. It was just him and I and the pastor. Pastor married us and we got married December of 2019. Then COVID hit. And that was a whole thing in itself, because even though we were high school sweethearts, we didn't know much about the people that we were at that time, like the new versions of us. So the whole first year or so of COVID, we really just spent time in quarantine, getting to know each other, building our relationship, you know, just kind of growing with each other. So after COVID was kind of settling down, my husband decided, you know, I really want to buy a house. And still at that time, we weren't like praying very much. We weren't reading the Bible. Mind you, I was still drinking, still smoking, like just we still would go out and party together. Like, not much in that aspect had changed in my life yet, but the change was coming. So my husband said he wanted to buy a house. I was very skeptical because I had only been out on my own for about 2 or 3 years at the time, and I was only used to living in apartments. So I was a little skeptical, but I was like, you know what? You feel so strongly about this, let's do it. We ended up buying our first home, which is the home I'm filming in today. And from that moment on, God has been in this house. God has been in this house with us. He was there with us when we bought the house. He was there with us when we got married. Like, God has been in this house. And the way that I really became a godly woman was because of my husband. I had to tell you guys the whole backstory so that you understand how I got here today. I would not be here, of course, if it wasn't for God, but I would not be here if God did not place this man in my life. So he actually had already been studying the Bible before I even came back into his life. He has a friend that he would study the Bible with. They would do Bible studies, and he was pretty well versed in, you know, biblical matters, and he knew Jesus, he knew God, and he invited me one day to do a Bible study with him and his friend. And I was very nervous about it because I'm like, okay, you know, I don't know much about the Bible. I don't know much about God. And man, just thinking about this, it's like replaying this conversation back in my head that I had with him when we first did our first Bible study. It's just so amazing to see how far God has brought me, how amazing our Lord is, man. If I could, if y'all only understood how amazing God is. I didn't know anything about God. I didn't know anything about Jesus. And that first Bible study was awkward. It was confusing. It was weird. I didn't know what to expect, but he kind of asked me questions like, all right, well, what's your upbringing? You know, did you grow up in the church? Asking me those kinds of questions, trying to get to know me. From that moment on, I would say that was probably about 2021. I've been studying the Bible with him, and now we're in a bigger group. We actually are in a Bible school, and it's been 2 years since I've been studying the Bible. God has completely changed my life, you guys. Like, I don't have the urge to go to the club anymore. I go if I'm like on vacation or I'm just trying to have a good time, but like when I'm home, I don't go to the club. I haven't been to a Houston club in, oh my gosh, like 2 or 3 years now. I recently gave up alcohol. I recently stopped smoking. God put it on my heart at a certain point throughout my journey to kind of change my appearance as far as the way I dress. And it was about, I would say, maybe middle of in 2021-ish that I was like, I kind of don't want to post these pictures anymore. I don't really want to dress like this anymore. And it was nothing that I did. It was nothing that I personally did to make me change that, but read the Bible and pray and ask for God to change me, because I knew that woman that I wanted to be back when I was out on the balcony crying, that girl, that's who I still wanted to be. And so I would pray to be that woman, to be that girl, not a city girl, a godly woman, okay? Because I would see other women and they would look so cute still. They would be not, you know, fully covered, like no shoulders or arms, but no boobs hanging out, no butt cheeks hanging out, like still classy and put together. And I found myself longing to emulate that style, to emulate those women. And it felt so good. It felt so good to want to change in that way and actually make the change, not just talking about it. So I started making the change in the way that I dressed, and then I went through my Instagram and completely purged all the promiscuous and sexy photos that I had on there, because I just felt that they no longer resonated with who I am today. And because of that, I've lost so many followers on Instagram. I have completely changed my content. I'm pretty boring on Instagram now. I used to be the party girl on Instagram, the girl that everybody would want to go to the club with, the girl that everybody would want to get drunk with. And now when people call me, they call me to pray for them. They call me to go to gospel concerts. They call me to go to lunch dates and coffee dates and talk about God. They call me to work out. And sometimes I feel so different than who I was that it feels a little weird, you know, not like a forced or anything, but kind of just like, am I really this person now? Like, did I really become this person? And sometimes I feel Satan tugging at me like, you don't have to be this person. You can drink, you can smoke, you can do whatever you want to do. And I have to remind myself, God has to remind me, my husband has to remind me, you know, do you want to be of this world, or do you want to be God's child? Do you want to make it to heaven? And I have to remind myself, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to stand out. It can get tough. It can get really, really tough. But God has done such a huge work in my heart and in my life that I'm just so grateful, and I will continue to do this even though it's hard. I will continue to honor him even though sometimes it gets tough. I literally went from partying every week, partying every day if I could, drinking every day, to having Bible study every week, studying and praying with my friends every day. And it's just been such an amazing change in my life that I could not have done on my own. I only can give this credit to God. And the city girl life, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. I love being a godly woman. I can share my testimony with others. I can inspire others to trust in God, to start their walk and trust in Jesus. And it's just so much more fulfilling than anything that I could have ever thought. So that is my journey. That is my story. My journey is not going to look like your journey. My story is not your story. But I am so glad I got to share this with you, so that if you are struggling, or if you feel like you don't know where to turn next, you know that you have a friend in Jesus, and you can say, oh, if Cody did it, oh, I can do it. Because y'all, I was wild. I was sinning. And let me say this, I am not perfect. I'm not perfect. I still struggle with things to this day, and I don't claim to be perfect. There's things that God is still working on in me, but the change, y'all, the change, nothing but my God. And I'm so grateful. I'm so happy that I can share this story, this journey, and I will just continue on this walk until my final day on this earth. So I thank you for listening to my story, and I want to end this video with a Bible verse that just came to me. The Lord sent me so that I could tell you guys. God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Y'all, that's so beautiful. That's Jeremiah 29 verses 11 through 13. I hope this video encouraged you. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if this video helped you in any way. Thanks again. I'm Cody Allen. Bye.